All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to CyTopic again, and we are very excited to have Mr. Tim with us again, our Cyprus problem expert. As you know, he has an Instagram page called Plan C, and if you've been following him, you know that there's a lot of insights going on in the 5+1, and his analysis on the events that came and then will come in the future, and we'll hear from Mr. Tim about this meeting. So I'm really excited. Obviously, as always, I'm joined with Mr. Berker Chica as well, and myself. We are missing a couple of people from the team, but it's all right. You'll get to see them in the future. All right, Mr. Tim, how was the week? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy Guterres coming to the island?
I mean, I think for most of us, it was just the same as every other meeting that we have. Like, it's weird. There were some positives to get from it, some strong negative reactions. Notably, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said there was no common ground in the trilateral meeting between Nikos and Tufan and Guterres. So there is perception that it was a mixed bag. But from my perspective, I think it was actually a resounding success. And I think that there are 4 things you can point to that happened in this week that indicate that it's a success. So firstly, the Guarantor conference has been announced. Now, I saw online Özgür Nami was saying, oh, well, we knew that was going to happen anyway. But the reports contradict this kind of this interpretation, because from what we understand, the authority to announce the Guarantor conference came from a phone call between Guterres and Hakan Fidan this week. So at some point, Guterres, speaking to the 2 leaders, says, I'm going to announce the Guarantor conference. He needs to call Fidan. Fidan says, okay. So yeah, that's the first key takeaway. There is a Guarantor conference, although the critics have said, well, we haven't got a date yet, and the 2 sides seem unable to agree on basic CBMs. So, you know, what good is an announcement without a date? And they're right to have these reservations, but there are also, 3 more positives that I took from this week. And now the sides have started preparatory work. So we imagined that after this conference they'd be talking about CBMs, but they're actually not talking about CBMs right now. They're meeting up regularly, and they're talking about where we left off in 2017, the Crans-Montana negotiations. So it's clear that the UN is now producing some kind of common text for both sides to work with, so they can look at the agreements and the disagreements and then agree that this is actually where we left off in 2017. So that's a really super important step here, and Tufan has clearly also been authorized by Turkey to go ahead with this preparatory work. And the third big positive was our new EU envoy, Raffaele Cito, who actually has long experience with us. He's the executive vice president of the Commission for Cohesion and Reforms within the EU. And so they basically deal with the Turkish Cypriot aid budget and Green Line regulation. And Cito said to Nikos this week that the EU is prepared to put together a legal team to support the negotiations, because there are some parts of the BBF, the Bizonal Bicommunal Federation, that technically go a little against the EU's laws, freedom of movement, freedom to settle wherever you want. But the Turkish Cypriot side is asking for some derogations from that, so they need to bring in legal experts. So with a legal team, and the EU now offering Turkey a big carrot behind our backs, customs union, safe, fence deal, whatever. So with these 2 things, we now have the same level of EU involvement that we had back at Crans-Montana, which is another very exciting indication. And then the 4th big positive that I took from this week was Tufan told us he's more hopeful for a solution after Guterres' visit. And he literally gave the reason as in his meeting with Guterres, Guterres showed him a roadmap to get to negotiations, and he said he'd never seen one before. So we know now that there is a Guterres plan, and possibly it's had quite a lot of input from the Greek Cypriots as well, because they've been talking about the Guterres plan for like a month or two already now. And the Tufan's only just basically seen it. That's how I'm reading the situation. So ultimately, I'd say, there's a lot of negative voices, but the process has built up so much momentum now. I mean, they're creating jobs just for the Cyprus problem, both on the island and in the EU. So something's happening. And to imagine that this momentum is suddenly going to fizzle out, I don't know, that seems like, to me, more unrealistic. So I think things are very hopeful right now.
Well, first of all, I also feel very optimistic as well. I totally agree with all of your points. I think EU now wants to rejoin the negotiation table, more interested, more into it, but there were slight signs that they were already interested with the election of Tufan Erhürman. They doubled the Turkish Cypriot budget from 36 million to 60 million. They started giving funds more, and I personally know that EU rejected a lot of Turkish Cypriots when Ersin Tatar was president. They even rejected Turkish municipality of Nicosia, Turkish Nicosia. I don't remember the English of it, but it is a recognized municipality. They rejected Mehmet Harmancı for a couple of EU funds. And when I talked to Mehmet Harmancı about this, he said, Ersin Tatar is elected and EU doesn't want to give more money to Turkish Cypriots and they don't want to give support to municipality. And I also experienced that as well. So I already saw the more interest in the Cyprus problem, more fund in integrating Turkish Cypriots within EU. I think that's the biggest and the most important step, is not peace, but integrating the Turkish Cypriots within the EU structure and culture, because we are very relaxed, very prone to corruption, very selfish individuals, unfortunately. So the EU has a very big opportunity to train us, and we are a small population, to train us to become ideal Europeans as well. And I think the EU knows this, and that's why they capitalize on a lot of infrastructure projects and cultural projects and artistry projects. So 100% agree. Same with Guterres. I think Guterres coming is already a massive big deal. It means that, okay, this is the starting point. This is the flag. They placed the flag. Okay, now let's start the journey. It's like, for a big Lord of the Rings fan I am, it's like, this is the moment where Frodo gets the ring, and now let's see if we can throw the ring in Mordor. But there is a couple of stuff that I did not like, and this is coming from a right-wing perspective. A lot of right-wing newspapers. I think it's very important to read right-wing newspapers. A couple of things is, I know these are very small stuff, but the press conference did not accommodate journalists very well, which is very, very small minor point, but it shows that UN wasn't really prepared for the journalists. They didn't give chairs, they didn't get waters, they didn't get tables or anything like that. I think it really felt the journalists as dismissive, and they didn't really care about them. I think the Q&A sessions were terrible. I don't think they went down in it. I don't think we got the juice out of the conferences. UN didn't really allow it. Another thing is the meeting with Tufan Erhürman and Hristoldis in a very beginning. It wasn't very diplomatic, very political, they didn't meet Tufan Erhürman when he came onto the Nicosia airport. Nobody said hello to him, no protocol, nothing like that. Yeah, in the green zone, no protocol, nothing like that. It's still very small stuff. I know this is like regurgitating right-wing propaganda, I know. But these are small stuff that matter for the small folk. Small folk, term from Lord of the Rings, by the way, but unfortunately it's the truth. We are very small. And these, I think the UN should have did a little bit more preparation. I know they have budget issues. I've also talked to UN, and they're lacking budget issues because Donald Trump and the United States isn't paying them. As this affected Cyprus a lot, because they're putting all the fundings into Israel-Palestine, they're putting all the funding into Ukraine and Russia. So I know that they're not really doing well, and budget is limited in Cyprus, and it's I think the most expensive facility is in the entire world is Cyprus for 60 years. A lot of cars, a lot of hotels, Palace, and people to feed as well. So it's very interesting to see that. What do you think about about the spark?
So I have some ideas about the background of the situation, and like the thing that shocked me the most is like Tim said, Hakan Fidan saying okay, and or like in general Turkey giving a green light. But when I dig deeper, right, I think it is mostly about weakening the Israel, Cyprus, and Greece alliance, and having more cooperation and the other benefits that my friend Tim said. So, so I believe that that's why Turkey is trying to regain improving the relations with the Republic of Cyprus and with Greece and the EU in general to actually weaken the Israeli alliance. And I think it's kind of smart. It's kind of smart, and that's the best way actually to have stability, peace, and development in the region. And I hope everything will be okay. But I have significant doubts about the inter-party wheel in Turkey for the Cyprus peace. That's the only doubt that I have. Other than that, I believe if Erdogan wants, he can take us to the conference, to the negotiation table. Yeah, but about people and the party politics in Turkey, I have significant doubts. Yeah, for now, that's what I have in mind.
Well, I mean, from Turkey, the messages this week were pretty mixed. We got 2 straight no's from Hakan Fidan. We got one of them immediately after the trilateral between Nikos and Tufan. And that one actually traumatized me because my brand is like known as being the optimist guy. And for like immediately 1 hour after the meeting, Turkish Foreign Ministry, absolute no common ground, sovereign equality, whatever. And then he doubled down on that like a couple of days later in his meeting with Ustel. But we can imagine that he would have said something like that at a meeting with Ustel because UBP is resolutely 2-state solution and they're still in government. So that one wasn't so surprising. And Erdogan saying, oh, we will never let our Turkish Cypriot brothers down, sovereign equality, all of this. But then at the same time, the AKP spokesman, Ömer Çelik, said that negotiations have to be in line with UN parameters. And I found that really interesting because that was a response from somebody who's in the Turkish government, who was actually Turkey's EU negotiator before the Turkey-EU relations track closed in 2018, which was in large part due to the collapse of Crown Montana. So maybe he wants a job, but I think he wants a job negotiating EU-Turkey relations now. But I think ultimately, yeah, it's hard to decide how to read these mixed messages from Turkey. Are they a bargaining tactic, or are they positions?
I think I can put a little bit instead. Sorry to cut you off. I think these are very, very good. This is what we've seen this before. We've seen this in 2017. We've seen this in 2004. We've seen this in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and even Tufan Erhürman's election. This is Turkey and his negotiation tactic. It's very simple. It's you have something that I want, I have something what you want. But it's the case that Turkey is always very open about it, and they're really willing to drain and hard negotiate, especially on the Cyprus problem, for showing their might, showing their power, showing that they will not back down until you give me everything that I want, or 100% as I want it. And this is, but back in 2004, the biggest example is accept me into EU common trade, and I shall give you a referendum in Cyprus. I have the power and the will to do it, and I'll force Turkish Cypriots to say yes. They didn't force us, I just want to point it out, but they did really support Mehmet Ali Talat back in the day, and the AKP did support it, and I think it's very important. And obviously there's a big difference between 2004 Turkey and 2026 Turkey, a lot. But I think the same mentality and strategy still remains. So we've seen it in Kans Montana and Ersin Tatar's election as well. The moment they have problems with EU, they cut off the Cyprus problem and they just do it. They attack it. My theory is what's going to happen is there's two perspectives. One optimistic, one pessimistic. One is the northern elections are coming up and they're talking about doing joint elections with municipality and parliament members. And this has never happened before. We are going to go vote for both a municipality mayor, both the municipality parliament, and the House of Commons as well, to the parliament. So this has never happened before. And this is a very big gamble by UBP and the right-wingers. And they want to lower the acceptance rates into parliament from 5% to 4%, or from 6% to 4%, so that YDP and DP, which are very, very right-wing, pro-AKP settler parties, and they're trying to force them in. And if that doesn't go that way, if the pro-settler parties don't make it, and it's only UBP, then I think the Turkish Cypriots will regain some negotiation power. And we can try to force Turkey to sit down on the negotiation tables, just like back in 2003 and 2004. When Denktaş was president and CHP came into the government in 2003, the government forced open the Letra Street Lokmacı checkpoint. And there was a lot of fighting happening between Turkey as well, back when Mehmet Ali Talat was prime minister, and they called him a traitor, etc. But I just want to say that history has shown us that when there's a pro-leftist government that controls the economics and the internal workings, usually more negotiation power happens. Just that the left-wing government in, again, 2003 and 2007 is a very important as well. The lefty government goes, okay, you can continue corruption, but you have to give leeway in the Cyprus problem. It's always been the agreement. And Turkey always fights back by not giving money or not investing in infrastructure, etc. But the left government tries to get funding from the EU. And if we can do it, just like in 2018, Tufan Erhürman Prime Minister, Mustafa Akıncı President, the strongest point that we forced them into Crans-Montana, I think we can see another 2018 Crans-Montana with two lefties in both the presidency and the government. I think. Very long talk, I know, very optimistic, but this is point number one. Point number two is the lefties are, even if they become the government, they don't have power. We've lost it. Just like Niyazi Kızılyürek, ex-EU parliament member, said, the Turkish Cypriots are no longer in the negotiation table. We lost the power with Mustafa Akıncı because we don't have the political power, economical power, or the willpower as a people. And the reason why they wanted Ersin Tatar to win wasn't to postpone the Cyprus election, but to break the will of the Turkish Cypriot community, to just break them into half so that they obey more. Basically.
So I just want to interrupt here real quick. Right. So I heard from a couple of journalists that in the government election that we're going to have, it might not be the result that we will get because, with the Tufan Erhürman's election, we had settlers and Cypriots voting him, right? But this time, people are saying UBP might increase their vote share because they might, people with some lands that they shouldn't have, after 74. And yeah, those people might actually got scared, freak out, and they might just vote for UBP. So if we see a rise in UBP's vote, this might be the reason. And it kind of makes sense, actually, because I know a lot of people like this. So, yeah. Tim, you were saying something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about going back to Hakan Fidan, and Doruk mentioned that Tatar was a ploy to break Turkish Cypriots' will, and I remember at the last 5+1 meeting with Tatar, I think it happened last summer or something, or last March. A member of the Turkish Cypriot delegation who writes for Özgür Gazete was invited to the Turkish Cypriot delegation at the conference. So she was there. And she said Hakan Fidan was explaining to the Turkish Cypriot team about the two-state solution. Like, if they just stick to it long enough, the other side will get worn down. And for any viewers who don't understand Hakan Fidan's history in the Cyprus problem, or even in the region, I would say that there are signs that he's potentially a larger regional actor than even Erdogan, because before he was foreign minister, he was head of Turkey's secret services, and as part of head of Turkey's secret services in this time, I can't remember the exact years, but he would have overseen not only the 2020 election interference in Cyprus, but also when Turkey started supporting Syrian militias, there was signs that Hakan Fidan was running guns to them over the border. And there's, sound recording of Hakan Fidan implying that in order to invade Syria, they would need to invent a pretext, like a problem from the Kurds, right? And there's a sound recording of him saying, well, there's no problem. I can send somebody across the border to fire a rocket back at us, and then we can have an excuse to go in. So Hakan Fidan is a very, very hard guy. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. He's very intelligent as well. He's got a PhD and he's very softly spoken. But beneath all of that, there's like a soldier's mind. And so I don't know if he's where the block is right now, because the most aggressive statements against peace are coming from him. And he has a deep involvement with us from the 2020 elections when he helped Tatar. So that's the one actor that kind of scares me a little bit. But also on the flip side, so that viewers can appreciate how multi-sided he is, I also think he's fundamentally pro-NATO, pro-West on the defense military side of things. So that's another thing that I think is really important to him. But he's definitely an interesting character who doesn't get commented on enough. We're always commenting on Nikos and Tufan and Erdogan, but I think Fidan's a very interesting character.
Yeah, I agree as well. A Greek Cypriot friend of mine, during the meeting, he called me and was like, "Oh, I heard from a Greek Cypriot or whatever, where he heard it from, about NATO solution." And apparently Hakan Fidan really, really wants a NATO umbrella as a guarantor. Like, he really wants the Turkish bases to be legitimized under NATO. They belong to Turkey, operated a majority by Turkish soldiers, and legitimize it, and possibly even try to get one in the south as well, with the US base in Bafos, I believe, trying to get that US base as well. And I believe US is also really into it, because Turkey said that we're paying all for the bases, all costs covered by the Turkish military. You just come settle your 300, 500 soldiers here, or however you want to put. It's all NATO based, but operated by Turkey. And apparently Christofias is considering this. I think Christofias knows that NATO umbrella, Greek Cypriots, he can go back to the Greek Cypriots, say that Turkey is no longer a guarantor. We are a NATO member. Our security is guaranteed by NATO. And, Greece is a NATO member, etc. And Turkey can go back to Turkish Cypriots, and most importantly, because Turkey does not care about Turkish Cypriots. Nobody's a Turkish citizen, majority of the Turkish Cypriots. So we can't win him an election, but he can go back to Turkey and say that we have conquered Cyprus. We have the bases. We took it. We have it. We did it. And everybody can narrate it. And I'll finish this sentence and give it to you back. A lot of newspaper articles were like, who cares? You can call it Confederation, you can call it two-state, you can call it federal state. Who cares? As long as there's agreements and peace, you can call whatever you want. And I think this was a point made by, I think, Christofias. I think, if my memory doesn't mistake me, this was an actual couple of announcements made by a couple of people. Who were like, who cares, man? You can call it anything you want as long as it's peace. And my last point is, I'm really stressed about it, because obviously this is a negotiation. Everybody wants to get something out of it, but I think people forget that we are nation building. This isn't something like a video game where we agree. This is the next generation's future. It's for the 100 and for 1,000 years. We'll be one island, one community, well, two communities, but one people, one flag, one nation, one politics. And yes, we are an EU member. That's true. but we have to be together moving towards the EU frame. Yes, we're going to be a NATO member, but we have to move together in a NATO frame. We can't fight each other. We have to move as one country, and it's very important, because I don't want the problems to happen again in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or even 100 years. We just have to be really careful. And what I've seen so far is everybody's trying to get a piece of Cyprus, and we're allowing it, and it's not good for the future and for the future generations. Yes, Mr. Berg.
Yes, I was just exactly going to talk about we want to live together, but there are dangerous things and dangerous models and threats about this unification, because we want to make one and good one. You know what they say, when you want to buy something, you want to buy once, you pay a little more, but you don't have to pay again. You don't have to buy the same commodity. So anyway, my point is, I was thinking, about the NATO solution. It's for all of us, it's acceptable as long as we unite Ireland, yes. But I was thinking the worst possible outcomes about the model of the solution, and I think it will be Turkey, doubling down on the two-state and saying, okay, we're okay for confederation. I give you confederation. It's like you are one. Come on. Well, for the confederation, you need two recognized states, like the Wallonia and the Flanders, right? They're recognized, unite. But with us, I don't know how can it be. Technically, it shouldn't be. I don't know what are they gonna do if they want, of course. What are they gonna do? Recognize TRNC for 1 second and then unite? But anyway, they can done this. But my point is, I think it will be very dangerous, because yes, Turkey, Greece, everyone will be under the NATO here. But in the future, if we have confederation, for a lot of reasons, we're gonna have problems, and we're not gonna be able to function. I can give examples based on other confederations throughout the history, people like Montenegro, countries like Montenegro and Serbia, even though they believe the same religion and they speak the same stuff, they had the problems, right? So with Greek and Turkish Cypriots, I see confederation is a really big threat. So something more in between, with with a lot of politicians and UN general secretaries that they suggest to us, the federation, I think that will be the way to go. And after we settle everything down, after we teach Cypriotness to people, then we will see what we want. Yes, Mr. Tim.
So yeah, in the recent months, we've seen various reports that people are considering a confederation. There was a leak in Politis, which turned out to be rubbish, but then a few weeks later in the British newspaper, The Independent, they were saying exactly the same thing all over again. There's a secret confederation plan. And I just want to say that, in my opinion, there is no way that Turkey will ever be able to table that idea at the negotiating table. It's just simply impossible. I mean, so Turkey's not actually at the constitutional table. So the constitution is for the state. So that will be, two states, unitary, federal, whatever. And the current agreed framework is federal. So the only two parties at the constitutional table, 2+1, Turkish Cypriot side, Greek Cypriot side, and the UN. Those are the people who have the say in the constitution. Turkey has a seat at the troops table with Greece and the two Cypriot sides. And it's also got a seat at the guarantee table where those four join Britain. But it doesn't have a seat at the constitutional table. And now that Tufan has he agreed at the start of the year that negotiations will go in line with a federal solution, in line with UN agreements, which is a federal solution. I think diplomatically, we're more or less safe from new ideas being introduced into the Cyprus problem. And I think that's why now the preparatory work that's going on is about where we left off in 2017 and trying to reestablish some kind of agreement there. Just on a final point, I want to maybe ask you guys, or just from my perspective, it looks like the Greek Cypriot side is leading the process more than the Turkish Cypriot side, because we had Tufan in many statements categorically rejecting the idea of going to a guarantor conference unless there was an agreement in his 4-point methodology. But what we're now hearing is that the Guarantor conference is inevitable, and the Greek Cypriot side say that there's no requirement to finish CBMs before then. The preparatory work is just re-establishing where we left off at Crans-Montana. So actually, the process as it appears now looks more in line with a plan that Nikos proposed back at the end of January this year. He said, I've got like a 5-stage plan to get us to negotiations. Stage 1, me and Tufan sign a statement saying negotiations will start for a federation with political equality. And we're now at step 2. The UN is preparing a common document. There's 3 more steps. The third one is, after the Turkish Cypriot side and Greek Cypriot side have agreed on the common document, they'll share this document with the Guarantor powers. Then everybody will go to the Guarantor conference, step 4, and the Guarantor conference will be held based on these convergence papers. And then step 5, at the Guarantor conference, they agree on new crossings and negotiations. So it looks like, I know Tufan and Nikos had big disagreements with methodology and what the next steps look like. Right now, Nikos appears to be leading it, but Tufan has some very strong demands, no return to status quo and timeframes. So it'll be interesting to see at what point in this process that the conversation, they come back into the conversation, at which point. Yeah.
That's an amazing question, by the way. And it's interesting because I think what I've seen so far, at least, this is my opinion, not an expert, not a journalist, etc. I think Guterres in this +5+1, Guterres in this meeting kind of validated Erhürman's 4 points. And if nobody knows what Tufan Erhürman's 4 points are, is political equality cannot be negotiated. I think negotiations must be time-framed and result-oriented. Previous convergences must be preserved. And if the process collapses again, Turkish Cypriots cannot simply return to the present status quo. This is the 4-point methodology that the Turkish Cypriots are leading right now. And Guterres really emphasized this meeting about, again, as Tim said, methodology, results, and existing convergences, which I think supports Erhürman's reasoning. Obviously, he did not publicly endorse every detail of political equality, such as Russian rotational presidency, announcing a specific negotiation deadline, or guarantee what could happen to the Turkish Cypriots if negotiations failed, which is the 3 very important points that Tufan really, really wants. But I think Guterres in this meeting gave Erhürman's methodology a greater international legitimacy, I think. And Guterres didn't formally accept it, but kind of said, okay, this makes sense. I think there's a common ground between the Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriots that we can make. It was very interesting. If nobody has anything to say, I want to pivot this conversation back to the meetings again for a little bit more specific details. Right? I want to say, we've talked about the beginning of the meeting by Tim again, and he's very wise. I did expect some sort of physical action, physical results, not like 5+1 meeting, which I'll come back to, because as I'm looking at the news, 2 minutes ago, Haber Kıbrıs has 7 minutes ago, I apologize, Kıbrıs Objective released a new newspaper on the Greek Cypriot administration's perspective on 5+1. Yesterday, Nikos Anastasidis announced that they're going to prepare the entire August for the 5+1, make sure that they're ready and it will happen. So I think in one of your stories, Tim, one of your articles, I would like to say, your blog post, you said that we're going to see 5+1 in September, and I truly believe that as well. And what I've seen so far with yesterday from Guterres' meeting, and what I've seen so far 7 minutes ago from Kıbrıs Objective, is that we are preparing, and obviously there's no announcement from the Turkish Cypriot side. But again, coming back to the physical tangibility, I really expected a date, an action plan, or a crossing checkpoint, or something that they can place onto the public and be like, hello people, yes, the higher ups have talked, Guterres came, Fito came, Fidan came, and we all talked, and we all talked, and this was like high level talk, and here's the thing that we're going to do right now to show our resolve. It's opening, for example, another checkpoint or enlarging a checkpoint or whatever. It didn't happen. I mean, and I think if the leaders cannot agree on a relatively modest crossing point agreement, how will they resolve territory, property, security guarantees, and power sharing? And of course, the argument is we've already solved these with Akıncı, and we're going to continue them. But again, the checkpoint is very symbolic, very important. You're breaking down the Berlin Wall. Another piece of the Berlin Wall is down. You can pass through here, etc. I just want to say that as well. I know I'm talking a lot. I apologize. Tim, the scene is yours.
Okay. So, yeah, I was also expecting at least one CBM, and I wasn't really expecting crossings, to be honest, because I know from both sides there are quite stringent demands from the people that actually live in the crossing areas and from the government that these crossings have to fulfill useful criteria. And the way that the crossing system over the years has been carried out is crossings are always opened in pairs. One crossing will benefit Greek Cypriot citizens more, and one crossing will benefit Turkish Cypriot citizens more. And they always open them two at a time. And, you know, at the end of Tatar's term, they agreed on 4 crossings. From what I understand, the Turkish Cypriot side might be the problem here, and it's because the Turkish Cypriot side needs authority from the Turkish army it can't make any unilateral decisions on where this crossing is in a meeting with Nikos. Tufan then has to go and phone, you know, whoever he needs to phone. And I've never been to these regions, but Kokina is apparently a huge military build-up there, and a very old one as well. Isn't it a part of the long Turkish Cypriot resistance? Like the Kokina has always been a strategic area or something. But anyway, so there's military there, and there's military at Atienu. And yeah, apparently this is why Tufan was not able to come to an agreement on crossings. Guterres came up with a compromise for the Atienu crossing, but Tufan couldn't commit to it because he needed to talk to the Turkish army first. And then apparently in the trilateral, they were also wondering whether they should just open 2 crossings instead of 4. And Tufan said, no, we can't split the package up. So I think eventually they want to open 4 at the same time. And that would be a huge gesture, symbolic gesture. And I think that really would create it would contribute to freshening the climate, you know, because right now, day to day, when you talk to Cypriots, nobody's really thinking about the Cyprus problem at all. Like, it's just a small handful of us nerds who are just switched on every single day. But in general, in Cypriot life, it's not a big factor. So 4 new crossings, I think, would be like a big thing. And you know, there's other CBMs that they could be looking into. They said they're going to bless us with a buffer zone solar park, but there's all kinds of technical reasons why they can't commit to this, because the North has its TRNC grid, and I don't know, some kind of administrative bullshit that they're giving us, probably to do with, you know, the Greek Cypriot side aren't prepared to recognize the Turkish Cypriot side by implication or something. We don't know. They're simply not telling us enough about where these confidence building measures discussions are being stalled. But regardless of CBMs, it's very encouraging that both sides are saying now that discussions are mostly nowadays centered on substance, not confidence building measures. So yeah, it would have been nice to see a few more crossings or a solar park or something, but the fact that they're speaking about substance now, I think that's a good thing. And you're right, there are many things about the week that also annoyed me. Why couldn't we have a date? But for the Guarantor conference. But I think it will happen. And I think, as you said, they're spending the whole of this month preparing for it. So yeah, I think it's likely. And generally, we can call this week a positive week. We definitely saw forward motion on the Cyprus problems.
That begs the question, what's next? What's next? Confidence building measures, you said, CBMs, Maybe they're going to announce them. Maybe they're not. You know, both sides agree on political equality. Turkey accepts a process based on the UN federal parameters, a date, a purpose, a methodology officially announced. What's next, Tim? What do you see so far? I know you've been explaining it for a long time, but let's just put it, we can have a nice YouTube shorts here.
Okay, so I think next steps are they're going to come up with some convergence papers, and their agreements will be written in blue font and their disagreements will be written in red. Hopefully they release these papers to the public, but I don't think they will. Instead, they're all going to take them to the Guarantor conference, and then there will be big decisions at the Guarantor conference. And I think the EU is supplying pressure on Turkey. And I hope that we see some more green lights from Turkey through the next steps. But then, even if we get to the Guarantor conference with convergence papers, the convergence papers will satisfy two of Tufan's 4 points. They will satisfy that, previous convergences have been respected, and they will satisfy that the solution has political equality with a rotating presidency. These things are easily going to be the outcome of the convergence papers, but that leaves us with two more unresolved things for Tufan to agree on, and that's the timeframes and no return to the status quo. Is this going to be something that they discuss at the Guarantor conference? I don't know, because right now it seems like they're not discussing it at all. They're just going over the convergences and looking at CBMs. So yeah, that's, I think, where does the process go on next? To answer that question, it just slowly hobbles along, and it's slowly getting faster as well, I think. So
I think they can fix the time issue if they really wanted. And about offering Turkish separates to not to go back to the status quo can be interpreted as reversible. Yeah, reversible, with the reversible things like the airport or Marash. So the EU port, right? Yeah, these kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. So what Bert is talking about here, and I'm hearing a lot more of in the gossip that's coming out from various channels. I'm hearing lots about a 2-year transitional period before the referendum, and it's really interesting that this is the gossip right now, because in Annan plan we didn't have a transitional period before the referendum. People were just presented with a plan. There was barely enough time to read the full thing. I think it was only out for like a month or two, big 1,000-page document. And then people suddenly had to vote on their future. And you had Denktash and you had Tassos Papadopoulos saying no. So it was a really toxic time. People were just unprepared for that referendum. And, we all know how that went. So basically in the gossip now, we're hearing more and more that there'll be 1 or 2 year transition period before a referendum. So, as Berk said, I think they can come to an agreement on timeframes and results-oriented negotiations. I think the UN is even using these words in some places. So the status quo, no return to the status quo, remains the last thing. And most people in the Greek Cypriot media and community are terrified by the implications of that, because they just think, oh, okay, well, if our side votes no again or fucks up for whatever reason, what's going to happen? Are we just going to have a 2-state solution? And so how do we fill 2 years between coming to a deal and going to a referendum? And how do we create positive momentum in these 2 years? How do we foster a culture of Cypriotism and economics of Cypriotism? Well, I think the answer lies in our history and in the history of confidence building measure proposals. Boutros Ghali proposed in 1992 to open Ercan Airport as an international airport for international flights under UN control. So that might be coming back to the table. Also, in the Anastasiadis years, they mentioned one possible CBM if the Turkish Cypriot side returned Varosha, would be the Turkish Cypriot side can open Famagusta port as an EU port. So what I imagine is 2-year transitional period before the referendum. Varosha goes back to its rightful owners in phases, I guess. And Famagusta port opens as an EU port under EU control for Turkish Cypriots to exchange their goods with the EU and receive EU goods. That in itself will change the economic reality between the EU and Turkish Cypriots, because you got to remember the economic reality. If Famagusta is an EU port, the economic reality will not just be about the EU and Turkish Cypriots. There'll be other interests from around here. You know, unfortunately, Israel possibly might, you know, and Egypt, for instance, there might be cargo going from Famagusta port bound to either of those two destinations. Who knows? So that would be a very real change that it would actually be quite hard to reverse. So yeah, they could do this in the transitional period. And then the other one, opening Ercan or Timbu Airport, I think it was called before partition, under UN control. That would give Turkish Cypriots direct flights to different countries. So if the Greek Cypriots at the end of 2 years vote no again, it would be very hard to reverse these two new realities. You've got a UN-controlled airport north of the border, and you've got Famagusta port as an EU-controlled port. So this is possibly how Tufan can be satisfied.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, because we got two stuff. They got one stuff that they really want. Actually, it makes sense. I was just going to add very little thing, like as another CBM, maybe they can give the mixed marriage child, people who were born from mixed marriages, they can give them like some kind of IDs for example, for 5 years. And if we go on with the solution, perfect, then they're Cypriot, whatever, the United Federal Cyprus. And if not, God forbid, if no, again, we couldn't make it, then after 5 years, I think they can reverse it. No, I mean, I'm ashamed to say that because I think mixed marriages should have kept, but I think that can also be considered as a reversible CB kind of thing. You know, that just comes to my mind.
Sorry,
yeah,
just before Doruk takes the floor, I just wanted to say, like, I think that would be quite hard because basically the only reason you can take somebody's citizenship from them after you've given it to them is if there are a threat to state security. It would be the maddest thing if they gave mixed marriage kids citizenships for 5 years and then just pulled it away.
Sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, oops, buddy. Oh man, I'm bringing my own agenda, you know. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it's comes into a very nice point. Citizenship or land like Varosha. These are non-refundable, guaranteed confidence building measures. And I don't know if you watched the last video in English, please. We already talked about this. It's basically saying that the UN does not support giving back Varosha right now as a confidence building measure. Neither does Tufan nor Turkey. Land is not refundable. If you give Varosha and people start living there, there's no way the Turkish Cypriots can get it back. And obviously Varosha is there for negotiations. Yes, this is its purpose, but it's non-refundable. So if everything goes bad, you can't get back Varosha. However, you can take back direct trade, you can take back direct flight, you can take back direct conversations, and the new Ercan, apparently, the new Ercan this is why they enlarged it. They prepared it because they really want direct trade and direct flight through Ercan. And this was a point in Akıncı as well, back in 2018 as well. So I think this has been a very long plan by the Turkish Cypriots, and I think Turkey as well, to enlarge Ercan, improve it, make it massive, get that ready for direct flight, and then go on the negotiation table. Give Greek Cypriots a couple of things, and I think what Tufan Erhürman has said, or what Halef has actually said to us is, not Tufan, Halef, I would say. Halef said to us that Greek Cypriots want direct flights through Turkey. They want Turkish ports to be open because they want cheap Turkish goods, and they also want access to the pipeline that Turkey is building so that they can sell their gas. This is very important 3 points. There's also a fourth point, which is accepting into NATO, but that will come with the Cyprus problem solution rather than confidence building measures. So these are the 4 things that the Greek Cypriots really want, because they want to be able to integrate and have security within their borders and within their seas. So this is the first trait. This is number 1 point, the CBMs, the confidence building measures. So everything we give must be taken away. So giving us direct flight giving Turkey access to high-level EU talks. Greek Cypriots gets access to Turkey's flight zone and Turkey's ports. Everyone wins here. This is good confidence-building measures. If in 5 years or in 2 years nothing happens, everyone takes back their legitimacy and everybody takes back what they've given, and we continue on with the negotiations. That's point number one. Number two, a UN leak happened like an hour ago as I'm scrolling through the newspapers and trying to get some context as well. And I have an English translation. I apologize if the English translation is incorrect. It was in Turkish. It has been reported that the team of UN experts on the Cyprus problem, headed by Canadian expert Dr. McGarry, is documenting the convergence reached so far in order to firmly safeguard the gains made previous negotiation and provide negotiators with a solid foundation. Under the headline, the UN's next step document, group led by Canadian expert McGreggy at work. Philadelphia's reported that McGarry's team includes individuals who previously participated in the Cyprus negotiations on behalf of the UN. According to the report, the UN is recording the convergence. It believes that it could significantly assist the process at some stage. The resulting document will be also reviewed by the EU team to verify its compatibility with EU. Will then be presented to President Tufan Erhürman and Greek Cypriot leader, Greek Cypriot President Nikos. This was a very biased newspaper. According to the report, the UN recording is the convergence. It believes that it could significantly assist this process. I've read this already. Meanwhile, Politis reported that a source close to the negotiation had said that the UN General Secretary had decided to convene a 5+1 meeting, although its date has not yet been determined. The source said the UN was preparing a document as part of this appropriate preliminary preparation meeting. This is basically it. I'm not going to read the necessary newspaper, but basically, Tufan Erhürman also said that he's ready for the 5+1. The Greek Cyprus administration said that we need 1 month to prepare. That's basically it. And we'll see in September how this goes. And if this leak is true, I hope they make it publicly available, which comes to my third point that I want to talk. And it's a nice question to you guys. Will there be a referendum? Serdar Denktaş said no. Serdar Denktaş said that with the current Turkish Cypriot politic demographic, there is no way this will go to a referendum. And by the way, he supports peace, by the way, federal state. So he said that there shouldn't be a negotiation and they can't. So is that the same thing as with the Greek Cypriots as well? Will they ask the people? Will they not ask the people?
I hear a lot of people telling me they don't want a referendum, and I know exactly why. But fundamentally, I think there will be a referendum. And I do think Russia there's a chance it can go back before a solution, maybe even before the referendum. Because, I mean, again, going back to Boutros Ghali's set of ideas, but this is all I'm taking this is all I'm basing my point off of. But these set of ideas are now pretty much entrenched in UN discussions about how to move along on the Cyprus problem. And, you know, I think the referendum is the fundamental part of reunification. It needs to be done by a democratic vote of the Cypriot people. So I think there will be a referendum. And I think it has a very good chance of getting a yes on both sides, as long as both leaders actually finish the damn negotiations this time, which they never did before. Because I think if both leaders can walk out of Kassim Diagni's house in the buffer zone, hand in hand, and say, we finished it, we got a deal. I think if both leaders can finally say that, then I think both people will vote yes. So referendum doesn't really concern me so much. I think we'll get there. We'll get the mentality that we need to see it over the line.
I think we should think realist in terms of getting a yes from referendum in both sides. Like, people have interests, like political parties, like politicians. If you guys remember, in 2004, the AKP has offered some properties to Turkish settlers in Omorfa area, and that's how they trust that we're gonna get yes, and we get huge number of yes, like 70-something percent. All right, 74, 75%. This time, I don't know. I'm not sure if we're gonna get that amount, but I believe that if we give the right incentives, we still can. Like, come on, it's EU. Like everyone in. I'm not telling this to humiliate or something, but like a lot of people are trying to get like EU visas or citizenships, right? And this is the easiest way. So this is an incentive. That's life. So like that's life, and everyone is trying to get their situation right on track. So I think we're fine. Yes, Mr. Doruk.
I just want to say that not everyone has an interest. I think the big mistake made by the Cypriot pro-peace supporters is the assumption that everyone has an interest. And I have made that problem as well. When you talk about Cyprus peace, on paper, it sounds amazing. You know, for Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, it gives you security, democracy, new legislative, getting rid of corruption, starting again, opportunities and more. And, you know, and of course it creates some fear, a fear of unknown, the fear of war, the fear of fighting and security, internal security, not external. And that is the right-wing perspective, and it depends on how you see it. But there are some people on the island, number one, because I've talked to some settlers, they don't want to separate themselves from Turkey. Turkey it's really their nation. They really feel they're part of it, but for some reason or another, for a better life, or for they're born, they are in Cyprus, and they don't want that feeling to be separated, and they don't want to move and lose their current life as well. That's number one. I've talked to these people. There's no way these people will say yes, even for an EU citizenship. By the way, I just want to say that these people are very nationalistic, and if this ideology, I hope that it's a minority, because what I've seen so far with the Turkish elections happening, that we have the more anti-AKP piece, like 60%, 70%, or maybe, if I remember, maybe 85%, and up until 85% is anti-AKP, anti-Erdogan, more, I would like to say, enlightened and more educated individuals. But it's a question mark. This is just assumption based on nothing. But, you know, if this is the mentality, you can't have Cyprus problem solved with these people. They will say no in the referendum, but also if we say yes, then there's going to be a bigger problem within the Turkish Cypriot federative state on how to rule the country, because obviously there's different ways to approach it. That's number one. That's number two is businessmen, Turkish Cypriot businessmen's cousins and their children, their wives, their aunts, their families, etc., and also Turkish businessmen and Turkish mafia. You know, we have a lot of prostitution rings. We have a lot of casinos and black money laundering systems. We have fake universities, more than 36 universities. Only like 3 of them are legit, or 5 of them are legit, and they're building new universities, and these are giving out fake degrees, etc. And it's a big industry. So when we say peace as a Cypriot, it means, as a Turkish Cypriot, it means getting rid of these corrupted institutions, get rid of this dirty money on my island. Let us start again. But there are people whose job is to work on these. There's people who benefit from this a lot, and I think that's why when Serdar Denktaş says, let's not go to a referendum, he doesn't say it from a racist perspective. He says it in a very utilitarian, very logical sense that, okay, if we say yes, then we're screwed. Because in Ersin Tatar's election, there's an email, you can guys find it in the newspapers, where Yakın, owner of Yakın, sent out a mass email to all of the staff, teachers, cleaners, engineers, doctors, saying that to vote for Ersin Tatar. This is a true email. And because if the Cyprus problem is solved, has everything to lose. He has like 4 billion to lose, and a hospital to lose, and a university to use, a bank to lose, etc. Imagine all of these corrupt banks from, I don't want to name anything, I don't want to get sued, but like tens of banks who only belong in Northern Cyprus. The moment they get integrated into the EU banking system that they're building right now, it's a new system, or they get integrated into the Swiss system, don't you think that the EU will check the accounts? and look at all of this money and they ask, where does this money come from? They will. And do you think the Cyprus has the political power, economical power to corrupt EU just like other countries can do? No, we don't. They'll slap us. They'll beat us. So I think referendum, for me at least, it's a big question mark. We're too deep. In 2004, we didn't have casinos. They were opening up newly because Turkey just banned them in the 90s, and all of those old casinos are moving towards northern Cyprus. It's not established. Prostitution rings are building up. There wasn't a population to support the prostitution rings or the ideology to support these prostitution rings. And I'm sorry, but there wasn't any refugee migrants coming from Syria for the system to take advantage of. There weren't a lot of Pakistanis, Indian workers, builders, etc. And I'm not racist. I just want to clarify. Just talking about immigration policies. There weren't. Now we're deep. We're too deep. So it has to be swift. It has to be powerful. Strike it without referendum. Abolish everything. Abolish everything. Start again.
I just want to say something quickly. All right, it maybe sounds controversial or something, but at the end of the day, it's our country. It's Cyprus, all right, and Republic of Cyprus has a sovereignty, and we call ourselves Cypriots. So I believe if there will be referendum, it should be the participants should have Republic of Cyprus ID, or at least have right to vote, right? Like right to get the ID. That excludes people like me, I know, but that's what is legit, and that's what is right thing to do, I think. I think it should be either that or, like Doro explained, there should not be any referendum, because that's an intervention, guys. Like, come on, it's Cyprus. Cyprus should vote. I'm sorry, it's not like a nationalistic way or something, but this is our future, and we are not living in a normal situation that we control our borders like this. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I should explain so much about that. What do you guys think?
I think, again, going back to just imagine Tufan and Nikos, they finished negotiations, they both got a plan to support, and both of them support it. Just think about what the media environment will be, because we'll have Greece supporting the Federation, we'll have Erdogan, classic Erdogan. Like, he's lovely when he's on your side. Like, imagine him shouting in the Turkish press about, oh yeah, I support the Turkish Cypriot Federation. Like, we might actually feel some warm feelings towards him when we see that day. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a good case for not going to a referendum, and we never did to begin with. I mean, 1959 Zurich Agreement, independence was just imposed on us. So maybe they can impose a solution on us, but who knows?
Yeah, I think that's the only way. The Republic of Cyprus formation forced upon us leaders, like Turkish Cypriot leaders. I mean, obviously, I know there will be some people who will argue against it. It's up to debate. I also understand, but I think Dr. Fazıl Küçük, with all due respect, you know, he's a leader, obviously, but he was forced upon the Turkish Cypriot community. He was in charge of the biggest Turkish Cypriot party, Kıbrıs Türk Partisi. However, when you look at it, the only elected leadership, which was before Dr. Fazıl Küçük, was forced out by his own people, is Necati Özkan. Direct communication with Atatürk. The surname was given by Atatürk. He was the only elected leader of the Turkish Cypriot community back in the British era, forced out by Adnan Menderes, back then who was, I think, Prime Minister of Turkey, and Fazıl Küçük replaced him because they loved Fazıl Küçük. And I just have to say, you know, Turkish Cypriot history is fascinating. It's phenomenal. But even Fazıl Küçük was pro-British, pro-Adnan Menderes, and not very controversial, forced upon leader to the Turkish Cypriot community, and Magarios was head of the church, so you can argue that people are believing, majority of the people believe in religion, so therefore he was already a leader. But again, was that a formal vote by the people? No. What if the Greek Cypriot community back then expected someone else to be their leader, someone more politically qualified?
There was one election, the first election of the Republic of Cyprus. Makarios ran against Glakos Kleridis' father, and Kleridis, I think, even though Kleridis founded DC, you might need to check these, any viewers, but he was, no, I'm not going to say he was running for Raquel. Maybe he was supported by Raquel. But anyway, Makarios won with flying colors. because in the Ottoman times, the political leader of the Greek Cypriot community, this only happened in Cyprus. This is the only Greek-speaking territory where this happened, but they allowed the Archbishop to be the political leader of the Greek Cypriot community in the Ottoman times. And I think psychologically, after generations, the Greek Cypriots just got used to this. So when they were faced with a vote between Makarios and Kleridis, they just stuck to what they know, which is having the priest be also the political leader.
I 100% agree, but also there's something dirty about voting someone else up, except like for the priest, because it's godly. He's so close to God. It's a sin not to vote for him. It feels like that I think for a religious person, not for myself. But I just want to say that Cypriots for history, we love to be forced around. Never the leaders, always the followers, and I think we're so chill. We just if one day UN, Turkey, Greece, Tufan, and Nikos came to us and be like, "Hey, all right, you guys have not seen the negotiation. It wasn't publicly available, but here's what we've come up with. No details. Just say yes, and then let's move on," kind of a thing. I think, in fact, don't even say yes. We're just forcing this upon you. No referendum. Just continue with us. I think nobody would say anything except for maybe a couple of handful of people.
Just want to intervene really quick. I think like I said, I'm gonna repeat again. It's like if just Cypriots vote, I think we don't have to be scared. I think it will be accepted. Really, I really think that when I talk with the people,
there is no. It's impossible, literal, mathematically impossible for only Cypriots to vote, because. Okay, let's talk about the reality of Northern Cyprus. This is another episode. You can cut it into half. Reality of Northern Cyprus is when you give citizenship to a Turkish person, a Pakistani, an African, etc., you are now part of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, illegitimate or not. Right now, it's illegal for most of the international community, but assume with me, bear with me. You are saying that you are protected by the state, by the institution. Every single land you buy is protected by us, the institution and the state. Every single thing you've done, investment, protected by the state. Your citizenship, you protected by the state, etc. You cannot disregard these people when you are making a decision on behalf of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, because essentially you're voting for Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus to return back to the Republic of Cyprus or to join the Federation, abolish the institution and everything, that the state itself, again, please, we always get hate comments, state itself that promised you, you are taking everything back from these people. Now, these people will go berserk. If they have a livelihood, if they're making their bread from this nation, illegal or not, they will go wild. They will go berserk. One day they were a citizen protected by a state, and every single land owned was protected under the law, like John Locke did, etc., in his papers. Now it's abolished. It's a Wild West. Now there's a new government, new institution, new laws, new regulations, and they're going to come and see whether you as a person have the right to stay here or not. There's no way. There's no possibility of Cypriots voting for it. There's no chance. I wish, but there's no chance.
Well, it was known when you invest in a country, when they tell you that it's Rum Koçanı, it's like Greek Cypriot land, you're taking a risk. And these people were saying for a long time, and they later on, detain people. So, I mean, you're accepting that risk. You are saying, okay, whatever, I don't care about international rules or laws on something. And also, if you unite and you're like a settler who legitimately take your ID, correct me if I'm wrong, I think from the Akıncı era, we accept to take some amount, like we accept to naturalize some amount, right? Because otherwise it will be against human rights. That's how I know. So I don't think that will be a big, too much of a problem. Like state will change, but you're still part of it. I don't know, if you had a residency of TRNC, it will be a residency of United Federal Cyprus. And about joining to referendum, I don't know actually. Maybe they can find a workaround. Maybe not. I don't know. I will think about it and come with new theories.
We might as well have an open discussion about this because we've reached quite an important point, and it's a point that I don't think Greek Cypriots understand as well as the Turkish Cypriots. The Turkish Cypriots understand it well because they have to live with the reality of it. But there are no numbers that exist that can tell anybody what's really going on. So basically, the population of the north, anybody who crosses the line from south to north will immediately see, especially like in Nicosia, you know, a wave of people who came from Turkey. Like within seconds, you'll see after you cross the border, you'll see Turkish immigrants, settlers, whatever you want to call them. And we don't know the extent of them. We don't even have reliable total population numbers. I'd say the most reliable claim I heard is that the North probably has over 600,000 population. These are not citizens of the TRNC, but overall population. This includes...
No, 600K was without army and students. That was Ersin Tatar and UBP.
Yeah.
Sorry, so with army officers, which UNAUSTA said that they can never release the number of army officials and their family, but it's closer to 800K on the islands on north. That's the most reliable number.
Yeah, I mean, so let's say 800, even then, total population. But of that, you know, just over a quarter actually has voting rights. So I think if you look at registered voters, it's like 220,000 or something.
Yeah, but the registered voters do not get updated. They say that they update it every year, but without knowing your population,
I mean, I've seen Instagram content creators. They show how the registered voter numbers are increasing. Every year.
Turns out a year ago, before Tufan Erhürman's election, the Sami Özüstü election, it's from that election to here, we only increased like 5,000 to 10,000, I think. Yes, but that's true. But the argument is, and the lefties are always asking for this. When I say lefty, it's not that I'm lefty as well. Is always, this is the thing. If you do not know the number of IDs you've created, how do you know the number of registers? Because you don't have the system to check the number of IDs created. You don't have the system to check the number of population. Therefore, why are we assuming that you have the technological capabilities to know the number of people registered? In the UK, I live in the UK. I get literally to my house letters to register to vote. In Cyprus, I've never had this. I don't even know if I'm registered to vote or not. There's a system where you have to manually enter, or you have to go to a political party and ask them whether they're registered to vote or not. So it's wild. It's literally, there is no system behind the scenes. There's pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
Caveman mentality back in the 1600s, like medieval era. So it's I think it's not bad. That's my experience.
Well, I think okay, so the numbers are unreliable, and I suspected as much. But I think recently, so there was a poll in the north, 76% of Turkish Cypriots support a federal solution. And when these pollsters, I think in the north, are calling people, they're not picking up the phone and saying, "Excuse me, are you Turkish or Cypriot?" And then if somebody answers Turkish, they hang up the phone, right? That's not how they're taking the temperature of the Turkish Cypriot community. So these numbers in the polls, they represent the genuine will of the TRNC citizens, whether Turkish or Cypriot. And we can see that they broadly are in favor of a solution. So yeah, I mean, that was just my point. But...
I don't know. It's just pretty dangerous, I think, because it's like our future, you know, and if another kind of group of people try to do that in any country, there will be reactions, right? And I don't believe any guarantor rights will give to any of the guarantors to determine the future of the guaranteed party. So that's also morally wrong, and I don't know. We gotta have to just kind of trust Erhürman, and let's see what happens. I'm hearing a lot of criticisms from the like unitarists, that he's not mentioning federation, the word federation at all. But well, we all know that he's meaning federation. He's talking about it. I don't think it's, well, I want to hear, obviously, word federation to make it strong and solid, our point and will. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what the political elites decide. So I think when we're dealing with Cyprus, it's okay. Like, we just need to be a bit more kind of like Machiavellists, a bit like more realists, just onto the point, rather than dealing with too much morality, from topic to topic, of course. But yeah, because we are in need of it. We are in need of a solution emergently. Yes, Mr. Doruk, you have anything?
Actually, I've heard about your points, which comes back to not Africa, apologies, Avrupa newspaper, which is far left newspaper.
Yes.
I think it's the second or third most oldest newspaper on the island. Very, very old.
What?
I shouldn't repeat that.
Say it.
I said the Rumju paper.
Yeah, the newspaper. Which is, by the way, for the past week, especially for the past 2 days, they have been under attack by Turkish people, non-stop. And people call these, just a little bit of history of Africa paper, very smart. They've been active for 20, 30 years, and they've been, essentially, this was the paper that you would go if you had a leak that you have to do inside the government, especially back then in Denktaş era. Here's the evidence I have. You were submitted into, back then it was called Africa. Well, first it was called Avrupa, then Avrupa got shut down, and then now it's Avrupa got shut down, and then I went back, opened Africa, and then also went to Avrupa. And they're still active. And basically, Avrupa yesterday has asked this question. He said, Hakan Fidan defended Turkey's two-state solution to Guterres. This is what they're claiming. And Erhürman, although elected as a supporter of a federal solution, allegedly from Africa, the Avrupa newspaper, avoided explicitly saying the federation during his private meetings. Therefore, the newspaper is questioning whether Erhürman genuinely challenged Turkey's position or quietly followed Ankara's line. Essentially, Erhürman claims to support the federation, but when he went the UN, he did not actually defend federation, or essentially force the federation. He just tried to follow Turkey and Turkey's negotiation problem. And basically, I don't know, I didn't see a proof in the newspaper, but he does avoid the word federation quite a bit for his political lines. So we'll see.
Maybe it's like a strategic ambiguity kind of stuff. Maybe he's learning from the higher ups, the big brothers.
I think the strategic ambiguity supports the claim that he's following Turkey's line, but obviously this is not my opinion, but it does seem that way, because it seems like he's hiding away. He's not showing strength, especially compared with, especially compared with Denktaş and obviously Akıncı. These two leaders were hardcore leaders. Denktaş, obviously, from a right-wing leadership perspective, he challenged Turkey as well, and Talat also challenged Turkey as well when he was prime minister. And Akıncı was obviously the biggest challenger of them all. So I think, yeah.
I mean, it's not really, Tufan's behavior is not really surprising for me, because coming off the back of 5 years of Tatar, where the government doctrine was essentially maximum relations with Turkey at all times. So now we've inherited that kind of, Tufan's inherited his position after 5 years of that. So it's kind of his responsibility to make it look like he's continuing that on some level. But, it's hard to say what Tufan's relationship with Ankara is, because I think people in the south and, some of the far lefties in the north and the far righties in the north, look at Tufan and they say, maybe he's just another puppet of Ankara. But maybe he is being treated as an equal, and maybe this is just a policy, a PR strategy that they've devised. Don't say a lot about the form of the solution, but carry on going to meetings. Maybe that's what Ankara is telling him.
Otherwise we can copy.
I think the problem is, for the far lefties, what I've seen so far with Africa, because I've been following them for a couple of weeks now, It's basically, if you are an elected official and the official position of the leadership of Turkish Cypriots, you need to be able to show resolution. And I think it's about, this is going to be so wild, but I was watching a literature analysis video on Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've like Game of Thrones, but people who read the books or watched the show know Mance Rayder, the free folk king, and he would rather die, enslave his people, murder his people, than to take away their freedom of choice. And the only thing he ever wanted was the freedom to make wrongs and the freedom to make right choices and wrongs, just freedom. And what the newspaper and the far leftists argue is, I think freedom of choice, freedom of democracy, freedom of the community itself acting without any external factor is the most important thing than peace, than unification, than everything. Because without freedom to make choice as people, that means that we're not living as a community. That means that we're not existent. We're just a tool. And that's the main argument of Avrupa. And very philosophically, very similar, I find it, with Game of Thrones' Mance Rayder.
Well, in a way, I do sympathize with this view, the Avrupa view, because, you know, as a Cyprov analyst, I'm a bit gutted that I can't really look to my community leader, technically my community leader, for much development. I'm looking to Ankara, I'm looking to Brussels, and I'm looking to South Nicosia. And these are the coordinates that I'm monitoring for juicy news. I'm not really looking at North Nicosia. And I know Tufan is an important part of the process, but it seems like our will has been sublimated to the will of the EU, Turkey, and South Nicosia. And we're just being pulled along by that. But I also, you know, as a resident in the South, I also sympathize quite strongly with the Greek Cypriot position, which I think is a position that is good to take for international law questions in general. They had, in 1974, a foreign army come to their island, divide it up, and then a few years later declare a self-declared state. So I think their maximalist mentality, which we can see Nikos Christodoulidis is still pursuing, it's like, yes, we want a federation, but we're not going to give a quarter to an elected official of the TRNC. No way. Like, they're giving any kind of slack to an elected official of the TRNC is antithesis to how they want to deal with the Cyprus problem. So I believe they're not going to give Tufan, they're going to, at every stage of the process, they're going to see how much they can get away with without responding to Tufan's demands. But, you know, I expect Tufan is a key player in the process, and they will have to cave eventually.
Maybe I can, from now, I can move to a little slightly different topic. Like, I want to ask you guys this question. Is the EU acting as technical facilitator here, or does its active legal presence create an imbalance given that its member state dynamics with Cyprus and Greece? That's an argument of the Turkish Cypriot right in general, you know? I was hearing that.
Turkish Cypriot rights accuses EU of taking a side. I think this argument is true to a certain extent. There will be biases. The Republic of Cyprus has been part of EU since 2004. They know the ins and outs of the institution. We had presidency. Nikos was president of the EU for a couple of months, and you know he was in part of it as well. They're Greek Cypriot MPs, etc., and more. So there is, when you look at it on paper, there will be and there is a bias. However, the EU helps the Turkish Cypriot community a lot as well, and has been helping the community for years to come. And I'm not talking about giving us money, etc. No, not like that. Educating Turkish Cypriots by providing an opportunity for education, improving their life standards, helping us in COVID, etc. And it's the thing of, I think there is some sort of bias in EU, obviously, because Greece is also a member state in the EU, but it's not as extreme of a position like the right wing has showed us. Yes, there's a couple of problems back in 2004 with EU. That's true. There's still problems with EU. That's true. But I think it's not that bad as the right wing makes it up with it. I think it's a little bit of a propaganda material that regurgitates every election, every single time.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's just a line that they say that somehow wins favor with a certain crowd. I presume hardline Turkish people. But my big disappointment in Tufan is that the line hasn't changed. He's still repeating it, and Tatar was saying the same thing. And I just think it's the reason why it perplexes me is because, okay, yes, there is an imbalance in relations to the EU between Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. We know Greek Cypriots use their EU membership to make life hard for Turkish Cypriots in certain areas. But that's just life on the island. We're not talking about life on the island. We're talking about negotiations for a solution. And the idea, does the EU have a seat at the table? I find it quite ridiculous because the EU simultaneously has no seat at the table, and at the same time, it is the table. And what I mean by that is, like, as I said earlier, we're probably going to get like a three-table system. So constitution will be Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, and the UN. Where's the EU going to sit there? Nowhere. The troops aspect, EU doesn't even have an army. Like, troops is between Turkey, Greece, two Cypriot sides, and the UN. Guarantees aspect, where does the EU sit there? It's not going to sit at that table either. Britain's going to join the other four at that table. So EU does not have a seat at the table. Like, it's not making demands or impositions on our solution. The demand that we have as Cypriots on both sides is that the solution will be a European solution. So the EU needs to be there for technical support, because we know that there are certain things the Turkish Cypriot side wants that are not really part of EU law. And what I mean by that is, yes, we will have freedom of movement, open border, and freedom to settle, but the Turkish Cypriot side wants it up to a point. They want a system where the overall majority of Turkish speakers in the north will be preserved over time. And they say that that system will apply in the south too. You know, the south should remain a Greek-speaking majority area over time. So, you know, what they want is caps on the number of people that can move across the border and settle. It's not going to be a totally heterogeneous population again like it was before. It's going to be a bizonal, bicommunal solution. So the EU is there to make sure that this solution has European values, even if it departs from the European laws a little bit. So yeah, the EU is involved on the technical level, and it's also involved on the geopolitical level. It's giving us the bribes that we need to convince Turkey. But whether it has a seat at the actual table to make demands, no, it doesn't, and it never has. But we want it to be the table that the solution stands on. We all want a European solution. So it's a silly line, but it wins some people over. So I guess that's why Tufan's continuing it.
Yeah, just want to mention, EU is also in the economic side of the things with the Immovable Property Commission, Taşınmaz Mal Komisyonu. I'm not sure actually, but like I heard that I think from Özcan Nami's and Mavroyannis's podcast with Fidias, they were talking about like after a solution with the Greek Cypriot lands that need to be recompensated, right? I think EU is gonna loan us money and like they're gonna help us with 30 years or something. They're gonna pay, but I don't know if it's still the same. That was the discussed idea. So they're on the land and property side of the table because we need them. If you're gonna lend me money, you gotta be there. And like changing the currency, you know, so with the central bank and such things. I don't know the details, but I think EU is gonna be there as well. So I agree with you, Tim. Like EU is not like they don't have a lot of presence in the table, but like the little presence that they have is not like bad for us.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal is just a European solution. We all, deep down, I think we all want that. I think even a lot of Turkish immigrants want that too.
Yes, I have infinite time, by the way. I just want to point that out. I can talk politics a lot because I want to dive into other topics, but without getting a tangential. If anyone doesn't have anything to say, we can close this episode right here. I think, yeah, sure. Well, thank you everyone for listening to us and sitting down and being part of the conversation as well. We hope that this is a very comfortable, very friendly environment for you guys to listen about our opinions and ideas and topics, and we really are passionate about the Cyprus problem. And if you have a different opinion, put it in the comment section. We try to read it, talk about it between us, and give an optimal response. And there was a couple of great comments, and we have to collect them and maybe make a video about them, us reading and answering them at the same time. Firstly, I would like to thank Mr. Timuchinaki right here, Clancy, the legend himself. I think for a lot of Cypriots, he is the first person that they go and read the Cyprus problem for. At least when I was growing up, when I was back in high school, I always read his articles and his blogs on his story, and I still do, and I still drop a nice like on them, and it's always very enlightening to read it. And then I would like to also thank Mr. Berk as well for putting us his opinion as well. Thank you for watching, and drop a like, comment down below, share the video, and subscribe, definitely. Yes, thank you very much, everyone. Have an amazing day.